Welcome to our Columbia Business School Executive Education session today. I'm Mark Roberts, Senior Associate Dean of Executive Education, and I'm delighted to be here with Professor Miklos Sarvary and Professor Kinshuk Jerath for today's webinar, The Future of Digital Advertising, 5 AdTech Developments to Watch in 2024. Before I introduce each of the professors, I'd just like to go over 3 quick points. First of all, a recording of this webinar will be sent to everybody who's attended by email. Please do follow us on LinkedIn by searching for Columbia Business School Executive Education. And finally, and most importantly, please do feel free to submit any questions that come to mind during the session using the Zoom Q&A box. And we'll aim to get through some of these, at least in the last 5 or 10 minutes or so. So today we're really lucky to have Miklos and Kinshuk leading the session. They're also the directors behind our brand new digital marketing strategy program that will run for the first time in November this year. This is a 4-day program focusing on how the new digital ecosystem works. It looks at how to build marketing strategies that are coherent and adaptable. And it also looks at how to integrate digital tools to build how to build an effective customer growth strategy. So, hi, Miklos. First of all, I'm going to introduce you. So, Miklos is the Carson Family Professor of Business and is also our faculty lead for the Media and Technology program here at Columbia Business School. Miklos's broad research agenda focuses on media and information marketing. His most recent research papers study ad blocking, online marketplace design, and content bundling on social media. And previously, he's worked on user-generated content, online and mobile advertising, and media and telecoms competition. He's a member of the editorial boards of a whole range of journals. And prior to joining Columbia, Miklos was the Deputy Dean for Executive Development Programs at INSEAD. He's taught and directed many executive courses and consulted in various parts of the world for leading industry players and corporations. And Miklos has also been a faculty member at Harvard Business School and at the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University. So, Miklos, thank you for joining us. I'm also going to introduce Professor Kinshuk Jerath. Kinshuk is the Arthur F. Burns Chair of Free and Competitive Enterprise and is the chair of the Marketing Division at Columbia Business School. His research is in technology-enabled marketing, primarily focused on online advertising, online and offline retailing, sales force management, and customer management. Kinshuk is also an associate editor of many journals, and he has also consulted for Fortune 500 companies. In addition, he's served as an expert in several high-profile legal cases and sits on the advisory boards of multiple startups. So Kinshuk, thanks also to you for joining us today. So without further ado, I'd like to pass over to the 2 professors, to you, Miklos and Kinshuk, so that you can share with us just some of your extensive knowledge on the world of AdTech development. Thank you.
Mark, thank you so much for this nice introduction, and welcome everybody to this webinar. We are delighted to be able to share some of our thoughts with you, and please do ask. I would like to emphasize, do ask questions. This is what we are here for. So digital advertising has been around for a while now. You know, over the last 10, 15 years, it's very hard to think about any kind of marketing without mentioning digital advertising. Big budgets have moved into digital, and it is really the bread and butter of marketers and advertisers. But the space is always changing, and it never stops surprising us. So what we thought with Kinshuk to do for this webinar is to kind of share with you 5 changes that have happened relatively recently, but we think that they are going to have very long-term implications for the future of digital advertising and for at least the next decade to come. So they are on the screen. One of them is related to privacy. So let us go through these topics and maybe start with the first one. Kinshuk, what do you think cookie deprecation and privacy, the recent developments, what do you think they are going to have on advertisers and also some of the advertising platforms? And what are the solutions that these different players are trying to find to get around these problems?
Hello, everybody. Nice to have you here and nice to be here with all of you. Thank you, Mark and Miklos, and great to be sharing the stage with you, Miklos, today for this discussion. So I've probably was my research, as a researcher, I was born with the digital advertising, I would say. I was been doing some research for 20 years now, and that's almost exactly when digital advertising was becoming big. So I've had the ability and the opportunity and the privilege to see this industry develop over time. And you're right, Miklos, it's been changing a lot, right? And now we've come to this point where cookies, which were driving a lot of ad tech and privacy, these topics have become so important. In fact, I would say that 2024 is a really watershed moment here as far as privacy and cookies are concerned. It's you can think of it as an exciting year, or you can think of it as a scary year, because cookie deprecation has actually become real even with Chrome, which has been kicking the can down the road a little bit for a few years. But now they've started with, 1% in January. I think 1% of Chrome browsers are not basically offering third-party cookies effectively, and this is going to be expanded over time. Right. So since cookies was driving a lot of the targeting and stuff like and measurement on digital advertising, especially display, video, banner. Now this is, and that is 60% of all digital advertising spend. So this changes everything. So I think there are many things that I foresee on the horizon. So one is, because targeting is going to be more difficult to narrow targeting, or very specific targeting is going to be more difficult than before, especially with third-party data. I think what will happen is that performance advertising is going to suffer because of targeting and measurement challenges. And advertisers will rely more on brand advertising and brand building and awareness. And on the one hand, the measurement is more difficult. On the other hand, it might actually be a good thing for the whole ecosystem, because consumers, as we all know, often our digital advertising and banner ads are not their favorite thing, right? So, but if we have more brand oriented advertising rather than performance oriented, I think at a higher level, that will improve the overall experience of consumers, because for branding you have to make it aesthetically pleasing as well. So I think that'll be a concomitant change that'll happen, and it actually might be good for now, for at least for the experience, right? Certainly not for the measurement of these. Now, so let's come to the measurement piece then, and come to some of these solutions, right? So, okay, there's cookie deprecation. And so what are the solutions? Well, one of the big solutions was is coming from Google under the Google Privacy Sandbox. And in fact, Miklos and I were going through some of the questions that people had asked at registration time before this webinar, and that point came up quite a bit. So Google Privacy Sandbox, you can think of it as really offering two very broad solutions. So one is grouping people into groups, or what they call topics, actually, that you group people by topic, right? And minimal data is shared out of your machine, in fact, right? So privacy in that sense is preserved. Minimal data is shared, what the targeting you get is based on your long-term interest in certain topics. So that is one kind of solution, which again, maybe as a consumer, I will prefer that instead of an ad chasing me all around the internet. But now coming to the second part of ads chasing me, I think that is also going to be possible, at least to some extent, because the second part of the Google Privacy Sandbox solution, or an important part, is this FLEDGE system, where Google is promising that whatever was happening at centralized servers, you can still keep doing that, but now more and more of it will happen on your local machine. Right, so we may be able to target, we may be able to measure, right? These are all still being tested, they're proposals, not fully implemented. Right, so I think these are the two big solutions that are coming up, at least from Google's side. And now what is very important here, and which is I was calling it exciting or scary, the scary part is that Google, in some of its recent blog posts, has minced no words. They have said that, look, the whole system is being upended and your old tech stacks may not be able to handle all of this. So advertisers have to keep adapting with the new technology. So that was a lot in that answer. I can keep going, but Miklos, one thing going back to where I started was that, oh, we are going towards branded advertising, right? And so for branded advertising, it has to be aesthetically pleasing and it has to be creative. And one of the very interesting developments recently is that creativity, we have a new tool for creativity, let me say, which is generative AI. So I think that also is a nice segue to our second topic of generative AI, how that changes and influences digital marketing, including creativity aspects of it. So Miklos, I know that you've done a lot of research on that. You have recently published academic papers and thought pieces on that. So why don't you tell our participants something about the second topic of generative AI?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kinshuk, for this segue. Yes, so generative AI is, I mean, you probably all noticed, has had an incredible impact on the business world, and everybody is talking about a major leap in productivity. And indeed, when it comes to creating something new, when it comes to creating content in particular, then generative AI is an incredible tool that can churn out content at a very, very high rate at practically zero cost or extremely low cost. So since advertising and the whole of marketing is creating material that is going to influence your decisions, it has always been a very hungry industry for stuff that has to be shown and that can be shown to consumers. On top of it, you generate all this imagery or these ads or this text, but you also have to match it with consumers. So there is this enormous pressure to create the right collateral, to create the right amount of products and new products to sell stuff. And generative AI has got an incredible impact. But in fact, Kinshuk was talking about my research. We have looked at the role of generative AI even before you are actually sending out ads or you're trying to influence the decision of consumers. We have looked at the impact of generative AI, how it can make market research more efficient. With market research, you're trying to figure out what is it that consumers want, how do consumers perceive brands and products, to do the right positioning, to do the right targeting. And this actually is a pretty time-consuming and expensive endeavor because you have to create large panels of consumers, run surveys with them. Sometimes you have to use statistical trickery to make sure that they are really revealing what they want and not just saying what they want. And we have tested whether you can use generative AI to replace consumers. Actually ask the question that you would ask from a panel of consumers from a large language model. And to our surprise, we found that there is an amazing correspondence to what human responses would provide. So essentially, the experiment was very simple. We ran a market research study with humans, and then we ran the same market research study with the large language model. And to our surprise, we found that there is a very good correspondence between the two, which means that it is a game changer for market researchers. Not in a good way, because probably they can only charge less to their clients. It might be for you marketers actually a good thing, because suddenly the cost of market research is lower. But then I also so already at market research you see that you can use generative AI in a major way to improve productivity. But then Kinshuk and I have also talked to one of our colleagues who is responsible for technology at a large online retail marketplace. And of course, they create on a daily basis tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or maybe even millions of ads to the different customers. Some of those ads are created on behalf of retailers who are just using the platform. And they have run a couple of experiments to find that generative AI can really, really increase productivity. I mean, one of the things that it can do indeed is to just create a lot of versions of the same advertising, which then other AI can match to consumers. So in the real world, you would create, maybe 24 versions of an ad, and then with technology, you would match it to different segments of consumers. And it's actually quite expensive even to create those 24 ads because it's time consuming and you have to have competent people to do it. With generative AI, you can have 20,000 ads in a matter of hours. And these would be just versions of the same message. But then, because they are slightly different, with technology, you can match it way better to the audience. You can actually target way better, and you can see a 10-15% increase in terms of response rate from the audience. So here it is just the variety of content that generative AI can create is increasing your productivity. But the same kind of productivity gain can be shown to exist when you are looking for the quality of content of generative AI. So you can actually create better content that make people respond better with generative AI for certain brand advertising, that we have mentioned some time ago. When you think about sales and when you think about chatbots, it's not necessarily advertising, but it is still marketing. And there again, generative AI can be incredibly helpful, especially when you are trying to do this across cultures and across languages, where there is a challenge of, finding the right people, finding people who are qualified enough. So there is a variety of areas where it is already clear after about a year that generative AI is going to increase productivity of marketing and digital sales. I don't think we are at the end of this list. We are kind of discovering the different areas, but already we see large productivity gains. So let me not go on about this because I could speak for another hour. Let's move to the third topic that is actually very interesting: retail media. Kinshuk, you have done quite a bit of investigations in this area. What is happening here?
Yeah, so Miklos, just before I get to retail media, I do want to put in a plug for one of the doctoral student that Miklos and I jointly advise. He has done some research on creatives, generation of creatives through generative AI, and what he has found is that will also actually could increase more competition in the ad marketplace because now creatives can be targeted, right? So I just want to tie this back to the first point that although we may not be able to target or make narrow segments of people, but we will be able to target better and better creatives to individuals. And I think that is a new dimension that's really opening up. So with that said, and in fact, that is a nice segue to retail media also. So retail media, just to set terminology, retail media, you can define it in a broad sense as ads on retailers' websites and also ads enabled by data that retailers have for their customers. So retail media in the last 5 years has just become an immense market. And the prediction is that by 2026 or so, it'll be 20% of all digital advertising because a lot of search as well as display kind of ads are actually moving to retail media. Right, so I have been studying this for the last 5 or 6 years actually, and I think I can highlight maybe a couple of interesting aspects here. Let me also say that retail media is kind of it's another version, or it falls under the big umbrella of programmatic ads, right? So that's the fourth point, and we'll talk about connected TV a little later. But just want to tie it that programmatic ads is retail media is just one kind of that essentially. Okay, so some of the research I've shown is that one of the big questions is one of the big stakeholders in retail media is the consumers, because it's their data and they are seeing the ads. So the big question arises that do consumers find these ads useful? Do they like these ads or do they not like them so much? So I did some research with Flipkart, which is one of the largest e-commerce marketplaces in India. And this research was actually supported by Amazon also. And Flipkart is now has been bought by Walmart. So, you can see there is some all kinds of complications there about, because it's data being used from essentially by Walmart website, but it's research supported by Amazon. So it's kind of exciting to do that research. What we found though is that there are many categories in which ads in retail media are actually improving consumers' experiences, because ads are matching them with products better than organic results at the marketplace would. And this is because sellers are bidding for these ads, and in some cases, sellers understand better than the marketplace which ad is the best ad to be shown to a particular consumer. This is not to say that marketplaces don't know anything. They know a lot. They have a lot of data. It's just to say that sellers also have information that gets revealed through these ads. And in fact, that's kind of step one, which shows that, well, ads have information and ads improve customer experience. And then the next step is what Miklos and I took together in another research paper along with a student of ours. And we said that, look, if ads can have information which improves the customer experience, why can't the retailer actually themselves learn from these ads and also improve organic results? So we have a paper around that. And then another set of our colleagues ran an experiment at JD.com, the major Chinese retailer, in which the JD started ranking organic results based on what they were learning from ads and advertisers and about advertisers. And they find that what Miklos and I had predicted in our paper turns out to be exactly true, that even organic results can be better through ads, right? So all of this is to say that retail media uh, might actually be helpful to consumers, at least in certain cases, right? So obviously advertisers love it because there's a consumer on a retail website ready to make a purchase, right? They're in buying mode. And advertisers are able to show ads to them for their own products, or maybe if they detect a consumer is searching for a competitor's product, they can show a poaching kind of ad, right? They obviously retailers love them because in the case of retailers, they have this data and they're able to monetize this data. They have the eyeballs of the consumers on their website, and they're able to do that as well. So this is actually, this in some sense, retail media has the potential to be, at least in certain cases, a win-win-win solution for retailers, advertisers, and consumers. And that's why I'm personally very excited about it. And every day you hear of one more retailer opening up their own retail media network. Now, I'll say that sort of the caution in retail media that we must keep in mind is a few different kinds. So one is, right now it's all done on first party data, and at least the privacy regulations right now, they don't make a big fuss of first party data. But if we start seeing too many ads on retailers and there's oversaturation, maybe we are kind of poking our regulators and other agencies to also start looking more carefully at first party data. So that's a little bit of a risk that we run. Another one is that consumers, might have some ad fatigue. Another one is that if brands have to, in addition to everything else that they do, with retailers, like they have to um, basically, let's say in a marketplace, sellers have to pay a commission to Amazon, right? But on top of that, they have to also show ads to be able to sell. Then they're really being squeezed. So we'll see some pushback from upstream partners. So there are forces against the rise of retail media. They're definitely there. But in general, I think it's a fascinating market. The other fascinating market on the programmatic side is connected TV. And this actually again goes back to the first point that I was saying, that we will have more and more branded advertising, right? Because of less data and less privacy. And connected TV is enabling that, because now, earlier what was the case, that a small advertiser would find it very, very difficult to have a TV ad campaign. But with connected TV and with digital channels, it's actually very much possible. So obviously the big advertisers can use connected TV, and they can show more aesthetic digital ads and also reach people. Still, TV is a big medium if you include streaming and online consumption of TV. Obviously, then connected TV is a huge media market. So the big advertisers will definitely use it. But even the smaller ones have an opportunity to do TV ads with smaller budgets that they have. I think that is one of the biggest new trends in advertising, which again is very, very exciting. So, we've covered the first 4 points, and through that discussion, both Miklos and I have hinted over and time and again about regulation and the government's role. And certainly there's been a lot of recent government action on the regulation side, especially in Europe and in some states in the US. And there have also been some antitrust cases, and most notably against Google. There are 2 cases going on, one on search, one on AdTech. Then there's a case going on against Meta for the Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp merger, that the acquisitions. So, Miklos, I know that you have perspectives on this, so why don't you share those perspectives with our audience?
Yes, indeed. I think that government action has sort of geared up a little bit. Until now, at least in the US, there was a wait and see kind of attitude, more or less. In Europe, the European regulators were always way more militant in this space. But until now, really, they had 2 big targets. I mean, this is not entirely true, but they were really focusing on privacy, and they were really focusing on foreclosures. So essentially what they were worried about, and I think rightly so, is that some of these big tech companies are actually forcing their own applications in neighboring businesses on the consumers. I mean, one of the famous examples was when Google sort of forced the Android users, the service providers, to have a Google search on their screens. So the mobile Android apps had to have Google search on their on the phone. And this would be a typical example of foreclosure that is making it difficult for competitors to enter. And European regulators are actually quite adamant about it. There were other examples. I think that there has been a change of heart in the US, and I think the US government, especially this administration, has decided that they are going to be way more severe in enforcing the antitrust laws. And here, the focus, I think, is mostly on the abuse, some type of abuse of monopoly power. Kinshuk mentioned the high-profile case of Google, the cases against Google for such abuse. So this is definitely going to mean that the large tech companies, if history is any guide, after Microsoft has been majorly hit by an antitrust law in the 90s, the company has become way more open and way less abusive of some of its monopoly power. And I think that we are going to see some such behavior on the part of the large platforms. Their market power is not going to go away. These companies have multiple legs, but this definitely means that they are not going to have as strong of a hold on the market as they had before, which means for marketers that they will have to prepare to engage with a bunch of smaller players as well. So again, this is a good thing, probably, for digital advertisers, because I think that the variety of services are going to be larger. It is going to be more difficult, maybe, because you cannot, take your budget to like 3 big platforms and spend 90% of it, but you will have to be a little bit more careful as to what opportunities some niche players are providing. But in return, you are probably going to get a better bundle of services than what you had before, where you were kind of like forced into using the services of these large platforms.
So Miklos, maybe, on the point of government action, and also I think one thing we haven't discussed today very much is social media, which is obviously a big channel, right, for advertisers because consumers are there. And very recently there was some discussions in the Congress on TikTok, and the future of TikTok is a little bit under question. Let's see what happens. But I just wanted to also close the loop by talking about a little bit about social media, right? That the social media, one of the other big things that's happening in 2024 in ad tech is more and more use of social media, of creator marketing. And so
Yes,
there are also some
you are
questions
thinking about
around that, which we
influencer.
can take it at that time. But I just wanted to mention this in our main discussion that social media is one of the big things, and I think we kept it because we know that there are some questions on that. So we can maybe respond to the questions and talk about social media at that time.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan because we have ran out of our time.
Yeah, thank you, Kinshuk. Thank you, Miklos. You've covered a lot really quickly, a lot of ground, and as you can imagine, we've had quite a lot of questions coming in during the session for clarification or to like double click on a couple of the themes, like social media, actually, Kinshuk. So, hoping that you can perhaps take 2 or 3 of these questions as we come to an end, and maybe we'll tackle them rapid fire if that's okay.
Yeah.
So Kinshuk, I'm going to kind of come to you first, if that's all right. So slightly different angle here, but a few people have been asking what your thoughts are on the basic level of ad tech related learning that's needed for any employee today, and especially for those who are sitting in middle management. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I know we are here in a business school. I actually teach digital marketing here at Columbia, and Miklos teaches courses on media. So this is something that we are training our students for, and so I think for the ad tech space and the advertising space is becoming richer and richer, which means that the skills that are needed are in some sense more and more, but it's also in some sense you need 2 kinds of skills. Okay, that's how I think of it. One are the timeless skills. Okay, these are how do you measure properly? Are you measuring when you're saying you're measuring the impact of an ad? Are you really measuring the causal impact, or was it just correlational, right? So it's a combination of being a data scientist and a statistician, and sort of a causality expert. So I think that is very important. That's just one example of a timeless skill that you must have. No matter what happens in the ad space, this is a skill you can always go back to, right? Some basic fundamental analytical skills. But then the other kind of skill that you really need is some way to keep up quickly with the latest and the greatest, right? So 3 years ago, TikTok, 4 years ago, TikTok was not there, right? And now TikTok is like everything in some cases. And now we don't know if it's going to be there a year from now because some funny stuff is happening at the government level, right? So I think people have to also, stay up to date. That is not something that can come from your school education. That is something that you can only learn how to learn. And I think one of those things would be to really read voraciously, to stay on top of things, to try out new things with understanding that some of these will not pay out in the long run, right? So not wait for a trend to mature and then get onto it. But if you really want to be a leader, try out new things and maybe try out 5, and 2 of them will become big trends, but then you'll be ready for it. So I think is this dance you have to do between these timeless or fundamental skills and these very current, what's happening now and how do I execute it, especially for middle management. I think that's important.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Thanks. Especially the way that
Yeah.
you've divided that into the kind of timeless and the keeping up to date. That helps a lot. If I can bring you back to where you started to go on social media. So quite a lot of the questions were around this idea of like what are the new trends really in social media advertising that we're going to see in practice over the next year or so? What's kind of just on the horizon?
So maybe I take that question. So social media advertising has been always there. I mean, like, if you look at the Facebook's revenues, I mean, most of it is advertising, and they have had great algorithms to match consumers' preferences that they deduct from their consumption of content to the kind of advertising that advertisers are offering. So this is old news. It has been on for about a decade now. I think Facebook started to be really serious about advertising in 2012, and then we are roughly 10 years later. But I think that what is really, really new is so-called influencer marketing. And this has always been around, but it in the original times, up until 5 years ago, I would say, you had a couple of large influencers that you could directly tap into for advertising. So you would typically, call these people and have a deal with them. But now there are way more influencers. There are people who are called micro influencers, like, just having a few 10,000 followers and whatnot. And some marketers have discovered that there is a way of engaging with thousands of influencers at the same time. But of course, how do you match advertisers to those influencers? A whole new industry was born, so-called influencer platforms. This is a very a nascent industry with dozens of players, and I think there's going to be a big shakeout. But influencer marketing has become a headache, and it's something that if you are a serious consumer marketer, it's difficult to kind of ignore. Now, what is becoming even more interesting is that with generative AI, you can create virtual influencers. And the good thing about a virtual influencer is that it's not going to slip off. It's not going to make a mistake. You can tell the virtual influencer to do exactly what you want them to do. And the last year, I think, has seen a proliferation of these virtual influencers. Again, they have been around for a couple of years, some of them, but now we are seeing dozens, if not hundreds of them showing up. So this space, social media, and is really developing some new advertising products, entirely new advertising concepts. And then going back to Kinshuk's earlier comment about what you need to do is, well, you need to learn about this space. You need to experiment, as he mentioned, being ready to fail, but also being ready to integrate and scale up the solutions that you have found, act on the insights of your experiments.
So let
let
me
me stop
add
there,
a
because
little bit.
otherwise...
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
Miklos, go ahead. I was just saying that what Miklos said, I fully agree with that, and just wanted to add maybe a perspective that, what's been difficult on social media. So social media until now has been really being used for brand related advertising, right? More on the upper end of the funnel. Because what is very challenging for social media advertising is that, I go to a social media network, let's say Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. I don't go there to shop as a consumer. I go there to be entertained or to talk to my friends and family. And I'm not in shopping mode, right? So yeah, maybe I can see some ads that would have a branding effect on me, but people were not clicking on these ads and actually buying. But this is exactly where influencer marketing that Miklos is talking about comes in, where people are actually influenced by consumers, where the branding effect is there, but the influencers also often drive them towards the purchase. Right. So I think this is a long-standing problem with social media advertising, that how do you make people buy through those ads? And I think social media is actually getting there through especially influencers and creators. And I'll just juxtapose that with some of the things we were talking about earlier, right? Like on programmatic, because of less data, things are going to go more brand, right? In that direction. But on social media, because of creators and influencers and some of the solutions, platforms like TikTok and all are developing, you'll see a greater fraction of, or an increasing fraction of lower funnel things happening. At least that's sort of, where things seem to be moving. And I think it's influencers and creators who are connecting those dots of taking people who are in entertainment mode and making them shop.
Thank you. Yeah, and if I can bring you back to maybe Miklos, you can tackle this. We've talked obviously a lot about AI already, and you're just talking about AI influencers, but the question keeps coming up obviously around AI, and the broad question I think is, how will AI influence the future of digital advertising? Have you got a few sort of summary points that you could just like leave us with around that?
Yeah, I mean, the early experience that we have is that it's going to increase productivity. So for those people who are in the advertising business, but that should be good news also for those people who are using these advertisers. So I think that we are going to be able to create a more ad material that is adapted to consumers, that allow you to target consumers in a more precise way, like essentially send them the kind of advertising message that is going to make them respond. So with AI, we can achieve productivity there. We can achieve productivity by creating more creative ads, higher quality ads. If humans are going to get involved, they are going to be assisted by AI, which is going to increase their productivity way more. Like think about somebody who is, creating a logo. So a graphic designer, if this person is assisted by AI, they get 50 ideas in 1 hour instead of 5 ideas that they have to dream up on their own with the pencil and the paper. If you don't focus just on advertising, but also on the sales part and customer support part of marketing, which is kind of closely related, then you are going to get a tremendous increase in productivity again. Language barriers are going to be broken. Time limits are going to be taken care of. Some of these AI chatbots don't need to sleep. And all of this is going to lead, hopefully, to a better customer experience, more productivity for the advertisers, and hopefully more productivity for those who are in the service of advertising as well. So I actually see a pretty positive impact of AI overall on advertising.
Thank you, Miklos. That was a great summary. Thank you for all of the insights from you both today. If we weren't before, we're now really looking forward to your new digital marketing strategy program that you're going to be directing in November here on campus in Manhattan. So looking forward to that. And to everyone on the webinar, I also wanted to let you know that as a valued member of our Exec Ed community, we're really, really pleased to invite you to our annual AdTech conference. And that's taking place really very soon on the 11th of April here at Columbia Business School. As you've attended the session, the good news is that you are now eligible for a 30% discount on conference tickets. So we're going to send some further information to everybody that's joined the session in a follow-up email. And we really encourage you, if you can, to come and be with us during that day on the 11th of April. So our time is up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you again, Kinshuk, and thank you, Miklos, for everything that you've shared. I hope everyone's enjoyed the session, and we really hope to see you on campus in the very near future. Thank you. Bye-bye.
The pleasure was ours.
Thank you very much.